Now a man of the house of Levi went and took as wife a daughter of Levi. So the woman conceived and bore a son. And when she saw that he was a beautiful child, she hid him 3 months. But when she could no longer hide him, she took an ark of bulrushes for him, daubed it with asphalt and pitch, put the child in it, and laid it in the reeds by the river's bank. And his sister stood afar off to know what would be done to him. Then the daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe at the river, and her maidens walked along the riverside. And when she saw the ark among the reeds, she sent her maid to get it. And when she opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the baby wept. So she had compassion on him, and said, This is one of the Hebrews' children. Then his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, Shall I go and call a nurse for you from the Hebrew women, that she may nurse the child for you? And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, Go. So the maiden went and called the child's mother. Then Pharaoh's daughter said to her, Take this child away, and nurse him for me, and I will give you your wages. So the woman took the child and nursed him, and the child grew, and she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. So she called his name Moses, saying, Because I drew him out of the water. Now it came to pass in those days, when Moses was grown, that he went out to his brethren, and looked at their burdens. And he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his brethren. So he looked this way and that way, and when he saw no one, he killed the Egyptian, and hid him in the sand. And when he went out the second day, behold, 2 Hebrew men were fighting. And he said to the one who did the wrong, Why are you striking your companion? And he said, Who made you a prince and a judge over us? Do you intend to kill me as you killed the Egyptian? So Moses feared and said, Surely this thing is known. When Pharaoh heard of this matter, he sought to kill Moses. But Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh, and dwelt in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well. My name's Arthur, and I thank you for joining me as we share together from Exodus chapter 2, the beginning of the life of Moses. Moses, along with Abraham, is one of the 2 most famous people from the ancient world. Abraham because of his faith, but Moses also because he was ultimately a person of no reputation, who became a great leader and yet maintained his humility at all times. And so, in that sense, he is a picture of the Lord Jesus. So the background was that a man of the tribe of Levi took as wife a daughter of Levi. We actually have the genealogical details given a little bit later. So the man of Levi, his name was Amram, a grandson of Levi, and he took Jochebed, his father's sister, as wife. So she was literally a daughter of Levi. Levi was the 3rd tribe of Israel. We had Reuben first, and Simeon second, Levi third, and Judah the 4th in Leah's family. And of course Joseph first in Rachel's family. And it would be these 3 tribes, Levi, Judah, and Joseph, in particular Ephraim, that would be most prominent in the nation of Israel. Now, we read the circumstances last time of why this mother would take her child and put him in a basket in the river. It was because Pharaoh had commanded all his people, saying, Every son who is born you shall cast into the river, and every daughter you shall save alive. So there were plenty of girls around, but everyone was out looking for the baby boys to drown them in the river. But this woman didn't want her son to die. How could she avoid it? How could she rescue him? Well, it's evident that she came up with a scheme which she could just have to trust God that it would work out, because it meant exposing Moses deliberately to the Egyptians, but attempting to choose which Egyptian saw the baby, that maybe there would be some mercy on the part of the Egyptians. But to overrule Pharaoh's command, it would need to be a very special Egyptian. And so she made this basket, which would float, well sealed with asphalt and pitch, and put the child in it down by the river's bank, floating among the reeds. She would have known that this is a place that Pharaoh's daughter came down to bathe to. People tend to be people of habit, and bathing in the river was evidently part of the tradition of these people. They didn't have running water and taps as we have, so they went down to the river for their water. And it would have been part of the routine for the princess to come down with her maids to bathe in the river. But nevertheless, her heart would have been in her mouth as she waited to see whether the plan would work, whether the princess would find the baby, or whether some callous man would just come along and drown the baby. And if the princess did find the baby, would she have compassion? Would Pharaoh allow her to keep the baby? It took great bravery and great faith and great commitment on the part of Moses' mother to actually trust that God would look after her baby. God would put mercy into the heart of the princess concerning this baby. Because even if the princess had decided to keep the baby alive, there was always her father who had determined all the boys should be killed. And the further preparation was evident there in sending Moses' sister to watch. But she was ready with an answer for the situation. So when the princess opened the basket, there was a baby crying. Now the Lord obviously organized this, that a crying baby would touch a woman's heart. And she has compassion on him. Compassion comes when people are in distress. She recognizes he's one of the Hebrews' children. And as she's looking at this baby and wondering what to do, Moses' sister comes along with a suggestion. Shall I go and call a nurse for you from the Hebrew women, that she may nurse the child for you? There's a double twist in this suggestion. First of all, the proposition is that this child is now yours. You have picked this child up. You have to care for this child. But because it's such a young baby, it needs milk. And we can go and get one of the Hebrew women who has milk to feed this baby. For there wasn't formula available in the supermarket in those days. And Pharaoh's daughter accepts the proposition. Yes, go, and the maiden went and called the child's mother. And she was commissioned by Pharaoh's daughter. Take this child away and nurse him for me, and I will give you your wages. So the woman took the child and nursed him. And the child grew, and she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. So she called his name Moses, saying, because I drew him out of the water. So his early life had two phases. The first phase was with his mother. And I am sure his mother, who had trusted God to put the child into the water and into Pharaoh's daughter's hand, also taught this child about God. For when he grew up, he always knew he was a Hebrew. And, of course, he would not have been allowed to forget it in the court. Although he had the support of the princess and her father allowed him to live, there were obviously other people in the court who were very jealous of this privileged Hebrew child who was being trained up as a prince. And Josephus has many details that we can read to see the kind of situation Moses grew up in. It's sufficient to say that the scriptures report that, having been weaned from his mother, she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. So he had standing as a prince in Egypt, receiving all the education and training that Egypt could provide. And she named him Moses, which means taken out of the water.